Alrighty, so I hope you found that enlightening, helpful, clearing up some concepts. We've been talking about asynchronous code a bit because in the last part of that example, he talks about event listeners. So it hopefully kind of brings that full circle. But now what I want you to do is before we move on to actually doing some code, I want you to tell me in the README file. So if you don't already have it, well, you do, because you should have it from here. Actually, no, I didn't have you create a README file. So create a readme.md file, okay? And I want you to answer this question. What in the example, and let's just move over to the example, it's right here, right? When we have callback and callback, what are those callbacks? Like, think about it. What is the callback here, and what is it the same thing, right? Or what is it? And how could we see or how could we learn what that callback actually is? Now, I agree with him. This callback hell idea is not what we want to do, but you do want to understand when you're looking at code like this, because he kind of just showed it and then didn't code it, which I think is totally okay, but I think it's worth talking about and to spend some time with. So, A, what is the callback for thing one and what is the callback for thing two? Okay, so place that in your README file. Place your what you think the answer is. Leave your answer in there, whatever it is. Okay, because I'm going to show you how to get the answer now. Right. So first put that in, and now here's what I would do if I wasn't sure. There was a couple of ways I could do this. Right. So I could just set a breakpoint here because this is going to call. Okay, invoke thing one. So if I refresh the page real quick and I actually step into the code here, okay, so if I hit step, then I can actually see the callback, okay? Now, in this case, it's on one line, okay? So if you wanted to come down here, right, it's all of that. That is the callback for thing one. Okay, so that is the answer to the question for thing one. And now we could keep going. And by the way, you could also just type, right, callback if you wanted to at this point, because we have it in the, right, that is the actual callback here, right, because we're in the context of this function. So if we keep going, now we've come back, right, we've actually called now the callback. Okay, so what is the callback? Right? It's actually calling thing two. Okay, so the first one and now thing two. Okay, so let's actually call that. And now let's look at the callback. Okay, so it's here, right? So if I was looking at it here, just to show you the difference. So what that's important to understand, because trust me, I wish nobody was writing this kind of code anymore, but they are. Unfortunately, and you may be somebody that has to troubleshoot code like this. So I think it's worth understanding when somebody is doing this type of code. And yes, we're going to learn about promises next, and I think that's good to do. All right. So anyway, I showed you how to use DevTools to see what the callbacks were for both of these. You could have also used console log here to see them, but when you're looking at something like this, it is hard to pull out what is the callback. Okay, so for thing one, when we pass it, the callback is all of this code here, which is a immediately invoked function. Okay, and then it says thing two. We haven't really talked about immediately invoked functions, but that's what it is. And actually, we're actually calling it, we're just passing it in. Okay, now let's move on. Okay, so now that we've done that, now let's get some experience with, with some of this, some experience with this asynchronous code with a simple workout app. So what I want you to do is create an O3 async workout. And actually in this case, I'm just going to show you the setup code, right? So I want you to set up the code first and then commit with workout setup done. So let me just show you what you want to do here. It's over here. Okay, so you have your index file. Okay, so in your index file, I have a form I have a label, and you can see them over here, right? Type of exercise. Then I have an input, type text. I do put required. I want you to have that. Label, number of repetitions. So if I have curls, for example, number of repetitions 10, okay? And then the time would be how long you're going to do those things, okay? So then in this case, I put step any on the time because maybe I'd want to do like 1.5. And then reps would be number. These two need to be number. Yes, they do course, but I think it's good practice to do it. And then I have a div with output, just output as the ID. So on the main.js, I just grab those two references to the forum and to the output. Right now, all I have is a prevent default. So when you hit submit, the first thing it's going to check is for that required, but once it gets the required data, then we want to prevent that default behavior. Grab the type. I'm doing a parse float on the reps and the time. Okay, so this is just a setup. So once you have that setup done, right, commit with workout setup. Okay. Now, if you're unable to do this challenge, right, tell me in your README file, what did you try? Now you can try the code, leave the code right when you submit, right? Because you're gonna commit the code that you try for this, right? So, but here's what you want to do is once the user inputs the required, it should be the required inputs, then output synchronously to the DOM the type of exercise and the number of reps. Okay. So over here, whenever somebody puts in, I don't have it working yet, I'm just giving you the idea, and I put 1 minute, right? Remember that set timeout, and yes, you're going to use set timeout for this, right, is in milliseconds. So, I'll show you how I convert it or work that out yourself. But I'll probably end up leaving it shorter so I don't, for coding purposes, but you get the idea. And then when you hit submit, I want these to output like start curls, your goal is 10. Okay. And then whenever the time is up, then you say stop, whatever that workout that they did is, right? Just say stop. And that should all output right here. Okay, so I actually wrote this out so you would have it, right? Once the user inputs the required, right? Then synchronously, right, do the DOM, and then update the DOM asynchronously once the time is complete. Okay, do both DOM updates using callbacks. Okay, so that's important, right? So this is the video from me. Okay, so I think I will add a line here. I did put it here, is that like I talk about, but I'll put it here so it's more clear, is that once you either, want to tell me what you tried, right? Or, have code, at least I want to see what your code attempt was. That's the other thing I'll look for. And of course, if you have working code, that's obviously what we want to see for exercises like this. Okay? All right, so I'll put that code message up here, and then I'll go over mine, right? And then at the end of mine, I'll talk about, and even if you don't need to watch my entire one, skip to the end that talks about, but basically I'll tell you is like, once you get this done, think about what could we do with this beginning idea of a workout app, just using this concept, right? Just give it some thought, because part of what you want to do is learn to get a little more like creative, like get a concept. What else could we do with this? What other functionality could we add to it? Okay. All right. So now what I will do is actually go, I'll stop this one, post the video here, and then I'll go do the solution.